use AI. Yes, use it to scale. Yes, use it to make you more effective. But you absolutely need to be protecting your ability to think in the age of AI, because that will be the moneymaker. And so if you don't have a hobby that doesn't involve a screen, get a hobby that doesn't involve a screen. That's how I think of social media, because I think so often in marketing more broadly, you're thinking about those first touch points and you're thinking about the funnel. And there's a lot of really cool specificity genuinely. Anytime I see genuinely, I'm like, I think AI wrote that. And I've started to notice that in my Claude outputs, it says genuinely 8 times an answer.
Welcome to What Keeps Marketers Up at Night, the show where we unpack what's keeping modern CMOs, growth leads, and marketing ops folks awake, and occasionally make them laugh about it. I'm Jeff Spinella from Darwin, where we help teams turn marketing chaos into reliable systems that actually work. Today, I'm joined by Claire Hueg. Claire is the founder of Persephone Planet. She provides incredible results for organizations needing help with social media management and community strategy. And she's partnered with fantastic brands like Quiana, Delune, and Cava, the amazing fast casual Mediterranean chain close to my heart, founded near where I grew up. Claire has been dubbed the customer whisperer by clients. And though she has vast experience in reinvigorating organizations of any type, she focuses heavily on cultivating dynamic and fruitful digital communities for social benefit startups. Claire, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining.
Thanks for having me, Jeff. I'm so excited to be here.
We're very excited to have you here, and you have some amazing experience, hopefully a lot of expertise that we can get out of you to share with our listeners. So very, very excited to talk to you. Gave a little intro on you there, a little bit of your background. I was hoping maybe you could share just a little bit more about yourself, fill in any gaps to introduce yourself to the audience. Yeah,
absolutely. So I am based in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and very proud to be a Midwesterner. Team No Coast. And so I love it here. I went to school in Iowa and I actually studied environmental policy. So I'm not a marketer by formal training, but I've always loved storytelling and I've loved bringing communities together. And that's what drew me to environmental work. I always wanted to be out with nonprofits. I always wanted to be pounding the pavement, meeting people, bringing people together, unifying them around a story. And I graduated and I realized very, very quickly that while people were happy to hire me as an unpaid intern, that did not always translate to an actually employable field. I did, in fact, tell my dad he had been right and I should have gone to business school. So I then launched my journey into customer care and customer service, and I hated being on the phone lines. But what I hated most was that I knew how to be good at customer service, but then I, as a Gen Zer, would go order a Chipotle bowl. Something would be wrong with it, and I'd want to DM them, and instead I'd have to call them because they weren't offering customer service there. So, no shade to Chipotle. They're just an example. That's not a real story. You have to be careful when you have Cava in your bio that you don't start a war of the bulls. And so all of that is to say that I came to social media and marketing with a background that really focused on cultivating stories and a background that focused on, taking community insights and leveraging those to create a unifying focus. And so I love working in social media because, I've helped people transform their community management on social media into an integrated part of their customer service team. I've helped people take their comments, this is so basic, but take their comments and use that to inform their social media strategies. And then what I love absolutely most is telling my clients that they're actually my second priority, that my first client is their customer. I think there can be a lot of egos in the room when you're talking about content and content approvals. And so I just like to remind people that it's not about what you like or about what project you care about and want to see on the feed. At the end of the day, my goal is to be pretty ruthless in advocating for the customer and saying this is what they want to see on their feed. And I think that all comes back to just being a digital optimist and someone who grew up on the internet and who's like formed real internet friendships with people and has used social media to socialize. And like, if we're going to spend hours of our lives on social media, I think it's brands' responsibility to make that a good place to be.
I love that. I feel that so much in so many different ways. The joke about Chipotle, which again, no shade, I love them as well, and Cava. But yeah, it's something that is very important, especially for maybe the newer generations, but even the older ones here. No one loves hopping on a phone call or having to figure out the different buttons you have to push to get to different departments. There must be a better way. And that other point you made about to your clients, you're not the person who's number one priority. The customers are. There's a great message in that, and that is a little bit counterintuitive, right? Because a lot of marketers in general, they should probably think, well, the audience is who I should be trying to please, or who we're trying to reach out to, who we're trying to get their attention of, maybe not my boss or something like that. So I love that perspective, and it's definitely a little counterintuitive, as I said. So sometimes we need to think a little bit outside the box and maybe change our perspective. I want to just sort of shift gears over to the theme of this show, which is what is keeping marketers up at night. We know there's a lot of stressful situations and marketers in general, community management, social media management. Things can happen. Things can go crazy and haywire. And we'll get to that in a little bit as what's a nightmare story. But just regarding to what's keeping you up at night, I'd be curious to hear what is running through your mind here and maybe putting some anxiety in your brain.
Definitely. No shortage of anxiety in my brain, but very thankful, that I get to have some added and an outlet for it in our conversation today, Jeff. So this is going to sound dramatic, but I will actually make a case for it. Right now, it kind of feels like the flood is coming, and I want to make sure I have a seat reserved for me on the ark. And so a lot of the work I'm doing outside of my normal day-to-day client work is really thinking about how to push my career kind of to the front of the scrum, so to speak. Being an early adopter, being innovative and creative and all of these things, and feeling like that's more important than ever. And so I know I said it sounds a little bit dramatic. I mean, I don't think people go into marketing because they want every day to be the same. It's a field where people are used to having to pivot and innovate and solve new problems as they pop up. But I do think we also have these watershed moments. I think a big one in social media, you talk about TikTok coming on the scene and the subsequent pivot to video. And you can look back and you can say like, oh, wow, like that was really a flexion point where the industry as we knew it made a fundamental shift. And so, I mean, I'd be curious if you do a single episode of this show this year where people don't mention AI. I think in the broader world, of course, that seat on the arc includes AI adoption. I see a really interesting and complex problem as, someone who started as a freelancer has evolved now to maybe like a very small micro agency type of model. There's an expectation from clients that you are using AI in order to basically function as a one-person agency or as a much larger agency than the number of people you have on the team, and that it's a way to deliver value to clients that goes beyond what I think a freelancer in 2018 would have been able to deliver, right? And so just constantly wanting to expand that value and give them more bang for their buck, but it also makes you more profitable in your work when you can reduce those hours spent. And so, yes, using AI, but then on the flip side, social media is heavily creative and community management is heavily relational. And so you have to be able to protect your taste and your creativity. So, example of that, I wrote a caption for a client, like me typing on my keyboard, wrote a caption for a client that went up on LinkedIn, and it got a comment from someone that was like, whatever AI bot wrote this really missed the mark. And, it's easy to be hurt by that. But I tried to take it as a moment, like that comment kept me up that night where I'm like, man, but you have to take it as a learning. And I went, of course, the content I've been exposing myself to over and over and over again as I'm on LinkedIn every day for my job is heavily AI generated. And so even though I wrote it in the style of an AI bot. I wrote it as if I was communicating with other AI bots. And so I've gone way, way back from drawing inspiration from other places on the internet, which is heavily AI generated now, and actually having to find inspiration from books and literature. And I'm watching movies again with my phone on the kitchen counter where I can't get distracted scrolling and trying to curate a content diet that feeds me ways of creating that do not rely on AI so that I can keep the taste and like editorial eye that I'm getting hired for. But it's trying to navigate that duality of I'm expected to both collaborate with AI heavily and also not succumb to some of these common AI taste pitfalls.
I imagine it's difficult, right? Because like you said, everybody's expecting you to do more with less or use AI tools. And how do you use them effectively, right? While trying to keep that authentic voice. I'm curious here. I want to dig into this a little bit more after I ask the next question, which is what tools do you use and how do you use them? So I'll come back to this, but what tools are you using? How do you use them? And maybe the second part of that is how do you manage to keep that authentic voice while using these tools?
So in terms of kind of like AI integration in my work, I rely heavily on Claude. I've worked with, like AI experts. I do not consider myself one, but people who leverage AI more than I do to help me build certain Claude skill files and add them to my stack. And then also in that process, have learned how to build the skill files. I do use still like a human video editor, a human graphic designer, and do a lot of my own kind of like creative direction level work with that team. So I'm digging around in Figma myself still. And then in terms of analytics, I've been on Sprout Social and Minter.io for like most of the existence of my company. And have started using Claude to help generate analytical insights there as well, because I think that's another place where ego and bias can come in for social media analytics. And so you worked really hard on a campaign and you want to be like, no, it didn't really perform in any of the ways we wanted it to, but look at all the people who looked at it, right? Like you kind of want just like the big number in front of people. And so have also integrated automated flow between Sprout, Minter, Claude, and then my deck designer, who is still a human, but it runs through a lot of AI insights so that I can take myself out of it and give clients like more honest reflections. So, those are kind of the tools that are most interesting to me right now. I love Minter for analytics. And then actually have been pushing a lot of clients towards Statusbrew for community management. I find that to be a much more robust and intuitive inbox than most social media management tools. That's some of where I'm clicking around in on a day-to-day basis.
Very interesting. There are a few tools there that I actually haven't heard before, which is great. I'm certainly not directly in the community management field or social media management, but there are plenty out there, and sometimes you need to dig around to find the right ones. I also think it's telling to hear you say it's a mix, right? It's a mix of using AI tools for sure, but having the human touch, and you need to find that balance, I think, to find the best output you can to be the most efficient as possible, but at the same time, not getting lost in the slop of AI commentary out there. I did want to come back to one thing you mentioned. So you mentioned that LinkedIn comment and that you did want the voice to maybe sound a little bit like an AI text. Is that something that you commonly do, or that is common out there in your space where people may actually lean into that sound of an AI voice or AI tool voice, or is that something that's maybe was just a one-off situation at that time?
No, it's interesting. And so I wasn't intentionally trying to mimic AI, but when you look at LinkedIn, there's all of these tells. And
Right.
so the tells keep evolving because AI is trying to copy humans, and then humans are trying to prove they're not AI. And so it's always evolving. So it used to be the M dash tell, right? Now I think it's that it's not this, it's this is a tell. And the one that I've just started clocking this week is genuinely. Anytime I see genuinely, I'm like, I think AI wrote that. And I've started to notice that in my Claude outputs, it says genuinely like 8 times an answer. And so I don't know what happened there. But you're constantly, trying to stay 2 steps ahead of the AI who's trying to sound like you. But on LinkedIn, I do think a lot of people use AI assisted content generation tools. Either they just run their idea through ChatGPT or they voice note and then have the voice note auto transcribed and turned into content or whatever it might be. And so when you're doing, community management, when you're scrolling in the feeds looking for inspiration, when you're looking at your audience, if a lot of people are speaking in AI language, the skill you learned of mirroring the language of your audience very quickly becomes mirroring the language of the AI tool they use to write their LinkedIn content. And so I feel like I fell into a rabbit hole where I was seeing these outputs from Claude in my own work in just the course of a day of conversation with Claude. And then I was also on LinkedIn seeing a lot of heavily AI generated content. And because that was kind of what I was feeding my creativity with, my own brain started to sound like AI chat content. And so I actually feel like for me, I was like, oh, I'm feeding my brain nothing but Uncrustables right now. Like I need like some actual, like chicken and rice and veggies and like real food for this. And so that's why I then had to kind of go back and say, okay, what am I using to fuel my creativity here? Because interacting with AI content is just not going to cut it. And so I do think there may be a world in which people do try to have visible hallmarks of AI in their content, either as rage bait or as a signal. But I do not really work on brands where that's desired. I work on very human brands. And I think people who tend to be AI skeptics are in the audience of that, which is why I think they were kind of like trying to flag AI in the comments. But no, I care a lot about trying to hide the AI of my work kind of like behind the smoke and mirrors of like the behind the scenes. It exists there. I'm a big advocate for like disclaiming where you did use AI in your work product to your clients so they know what came from your brain and what was kind of enabled by AI for that transparency. But for the end consumer, I don't want them to be able to piece out, I think she used AI to edit this, but not to write this. Or, AI wrote the copy and the graphic, but then a human designed it. I want it to all feel seamless and artful.
Yeah. Uh, Understood on that. And that's everything I've heard as well from folks I've spoken to, and certainly you. It seems like that authentic voice is very important. There's always going to be people on the internet who are hating and talking trash and whatever it may be, or just trying to gin up anger as well by saying things. But it seems like it's just such heavy work. So I'm very impressed by it because it almost seems to me as if you have to be fully engaged in what the language looks like on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis on LinkedIn, so you can start to pick up these AI tells. Therefore, when you see it, if you're using an AI tool, you don't think, oh, that's a good word, I should use that. It's more like, oh, that's an AI word or something like that. So you sometimes need that nourishment, as you said, from just other mediums of writing that are human and organic. Sounds like a challenge that probably will not end anytime soon. But I wish you luck in that, and I think it's very important for brands. So it's going to be something that probably gets more important and more necessary the more that AI evolves. Someone out there, someone like you, who can sort of walk that fine line. Shifting gears a little bit here, because I can't do the podcast without talking a little bit about what we at Darwin do, which is intersection of marketing technology, MarTech. There are a ton of tools out there for tracking, for analyzing user behavior, everything that's common as Google Analytics to, not niche, but there's like Crazy Egg or, managing heat maps on your website. I imagine you use a few of these, and I'm curious, how do you decide which ones to use? You can even talk maybe a little about which ones you do use. How do you decide sometimes that, this is just noise, it's just adding to the data, but it's not really giving me anything important? I'm curious how you sort of look at what tools to use, why, how to keep them, that sort of thing.
Definitely. So I have a story that I promise is relevant. When I was in high school, I got a scholarship to spend a summer abroad in Switzerland and was living with a host family. And it was my first time really ever leaving the Midwest besides one family trip to Disney World. So it was a huge deal. I got out all my coolest clothes, right? You're thinking about the impression you're going to make living in this chic European city. Listen, my outfits were not cute. Right? Like any 16-year-old interpretation of European fashion. I was wearing fleece leggings in public. It's fine. It's all fine. Right. But you're thinking about how you're going to make your first impression. And I pack everything up. I feel so big in my britches. My flight gets delayed. And all of these complexities, my first time traveling internationally, I'm doing it by myself. I get in at 4 a.m. in Geneva, Switzerland. So my host dad picks me up on his own. We get in, I kick my shoes off, and I go and I crash in the guest room. And I wake up and I put on my coolest outfit because I know I'm going to have a older host sister and older host brother, and I want to impress them at breakfast. And I come out and my host sister goes, "Yep, I was right. She's tall." And I was like, "What?" Right? You do all this preparation to make your first impression. And she goes, "I saw your shoes by the door. Either you're a clown or you were tall. I figured you were tall." And she just immediately clocked that I was going to be tall. And it wasn't in a rude way. It was just in a, "Yep, I already knew this about you" way. And I think that's how I think of social media, because I think so often in marketing more broadly, you're thinking about those first touch points and you're thinking about the funnel. And there's a lot of really cool specificity you can get into. But on social media, we are not afforded that luxury, because when someone's discovering you in organic social media, their touch point might be your shoes that you kicked off by the door at 4 a.m. Your first impression could be anything you ever work on. And so to me, I feel what's really interesting is actually partnering with the paid teams, the teams who are running the social media ads, and understanding what their funnels and insights are, and then trying to mirror aspects of that in all of the organic content we're making. Because, right, if that's your first impression, I was not thinking about what shoes I was wearing at the airport or how I left them by the door or whatever, but I have missed my opportunity to make a first impression because she already had that organic touch point that I hadn't thought about. And so I really think for organic social, the skill is thinking about everything that could possibly be your first impression. Is it your link in bio? Is it your bio? Is it the caption you put over the reel? Is it the caption you put in the body caption section of the reel? Every single touch point could be somebody's first impression of your business. And so to me, I'm not really answering your question about tools. I think I partner with the people who know those tools really well. Mm-hmm. And then I try to glean the more human insight from those conversations, or a more strategic level insight, because I can't control where people click first on our social media feed, really. I can influence it through some strategic design, and, I've got my tricks, but yeah, it's really through a partnership with, I think, the more traditional marketer. And then I tend to lean more on the brand side of things to make sure that we're covering all our bases on that first impression, so that it's helping pull people into a more intentional funnel.
Mm-hmm. I think that might be the most interesting and maybe most important way to answer that question of anyone I've talked to as well, because you're not talking about, oh, well, I use this tool because I use this, I use this one because I use this does this, but you're getting to the crux of maybe the psychology behind how to approach it, right? This is important to make sure you're aligned with the other team who actually use it, to make sure I know what matters to them. I know what might be the situations where XYZ happens, where XYZ person encounters our brand. And so that's what informs my decision, as opposed to, oh, well, at our company, we measure conversions, we measure traffic, this. No, I love that. I love that. Amazing anecdote. I'm sorry that you had a bad first impression with this person.
Yeah.
No offense to the Europeans, they're lovely, but maybe they're a little colder than us Americans at times.
Yeah, I mean, and now, I adore my host sister. We had a great time together, but I just remember having so much anxiety around my first impression and being like, actually, I have no control over what someone's first impression of me is, unless you're thinking outside the box like that. But, you said something about okay, if we're measuring conversions or we're measuring this, I do think a pitfall I see in organic social professionals is saying, I don't care about that, right? It's not my job to convert. It's not my job to result in sales. I'm truly only brand. And I would say, knock it off. Stop saying that. You are shooting yourself in the foot, because no one is ever going to bet on something where you go, you should just give me money. Do not say that. And so to me, I'm like, it's not that I don't work in any of these marketing tools. It's that I'm going to the paid person and I'm saying, hey, how are you doing your UTM tracking? I need to run these UTM links in my link in bio. I want to test this linking in story versus linking it in bio. And then I'm nesting it into all of their tracking and their infrastructure, so that when they are running their reports, organic is there as, a zero CAC, right? It's like, and we got all of these clicks for free because of what we were doing on organic social. And so then that's helping prove the value of the work we're doing. And so because I'm integrating with a lot of different clients' teams, I don't keep my own stack, but you absolutely need to be keeping track of what results organic social drives, typically alongside someone who is keeping track of those results for their full-time job, so that you are piggybacking and ever present in those reports. If organic social is not in a growth conversation, you have not done your job at proving the value of investing in organic social.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, you obviously cannot forget about these important pieces for sure. What drives revenue is the most important thing, and so everything needs to drive that, right? But I love the alignment part, because that's very important too. That a lot of folks get siloed, or they think, this is my job, I'm going to do it, I'm the best, whatever it may be. You do your thing, but without that aligned sales and marketing org, but even the people within the sales org or marketing org all together, you're just going to have a tough time having that success. Shifting gears a little bit here, because we talked briefly before we hopped on here about some generational differences between folks. And, you work deeply in social media marketing, community management. I'm a millennial. You mentioned you're Gen Z. I know you probably work, like you said, with Gen X's. I work with all of them as well. I'm curious what differences you see in how these folks either consume content or work with content, or these fields. Any differences you see, anything you want to speak on the generational divide?
Yeah. Oh, man. I mean, it's do you have 5 hours? I think specifically in community management, what's interesting is I feel like you can tell the kind of way people interface with social media. So for Gen X, where you're less digitally native to social media, there's always that veneer of professionalism. People really want to make sure they're putting their best selves out on social media. And so you should really only ever be complimenting them or dittoing something they already said in their caption, right? You want to push it further, right? It's, Jeff, you're so smart. Jeff, you're so beautiful. Jeff, this is amazing. We're so glad you attended our event. It would not have been the same without you. And that's what Gen X wants to hear. And I feel like that follows over into content for them a little bit as well. millennials, I feel like the like millennial optimism, millennial cringe is now becoming a trend for Gen Z and Gen Alpha, where people are like, to be in college in 2016, or like, to live in Brooklyn in 2012 and Obama's your president. Like it is aspirational, but I also feel like that culture, right? It was a lot of the like BuzzFeed, like the skinny scarves. And so I feel like millennials love the corny memes. Sorry, corny was maybe a little bit of a judgment from me.
No offense taken.
The like hyper personal brand in the comments, right? Like when people are kind of, you see it with your Wendy's or, different brands where they're trying to be like your best friend in the comments. And then I think Gen Z is the first generation that really grew up with parents who were on social media. And so they actually have a very interesting relationship to it, where they're both using it a ton and also extremely critical of it. And so Gen Z is the one who's in the comment section saying, quiet brand, or someone, this is a big one on TikTok right now. Someone will post something sharing about a hardship or breakup or something in their lives. And people will be in the comments like, did the journal factory explode? This is why they invented journals. Like,
a little harsher, a little more direct.
It's like a little bit like a, why would you share this question? Or like, why are you doing this? And so, I mean, you're seeing the larger trends as well, I think across generations, but especially in Gen Z, where like the brick is popular. Getting a dumb phone is becoming more popular. And now, I mean, yesterday, as of recording this, there was a court decision that held Meta and Google liable for damages to someone's mental health in childhood. And so I think the floodgates are kind of opening on that conversation. And so if you look at things like cigarettes, right? It's like easy for you to be like, yeah, and then they passed a bunch of regulations on cigarettes. And it's like, yeah, and those tobacco companies didn't say, oops, you got me. Then we got mango jewel pods and Zins, and people are re-addicted again. And so I think social media is just following that journey, but, another generation or two back, where I think that Gen X, tends to still heavily use social media. Millennials tend to heavily use social media. I think Gen X is going to step back from it. And then I think that we're just going to have like supercharged versions of it for Gen Alpha and beyond. And so, I think that's a little bit of the typecasting that I see for the generations. Obviously, when you're working with an even more specific audience, you get into even deeper insights. But I feel like Gen Z is kind of your harshest critic, the strongest BS meter. And so you have to get really, really creative about how you speak to them in a way that they'll respect as a brand.
Yeah, that's very interesting insight. And I see it as well. I'm not as keen as you are certainly on social media, but I've been around the block. As I mentioned, I'm a millennial, and we knew years ago that, mentioning that court case you just mentioned, that there are a lot of negative effects of social media too. But it was kind of like people talk about it, but like, well, push away, or puffing up, or whatever it was. It's interesting to see now that there are some consequences, so to speak. I know I don't want to get political, but there were conversations for years about Facebook's election interference or whatever it may be. Another thing that's interesting, and no matter what side you're on that, it's interesting to see what people were curious. Well, will there be anything that comes out of this? Will there be any regulation? Because a lot like, I feel like AI is now, social media didn't have that sort of regulation for a long time. It was and really is still sort of self-monitored, right? So it's interesting to see that. But yeah, I love to talk to you about the extremer ends too, boomers and Gen Alpha, because my mom's a boomer. She uses social media too. It's very interesting, probably similar to the Gen X. But yeah, it's changing. I can see people sort of pushing back now. When I went to a little self-story here. When I went to University of Maryland, where I went to school, my orientation, they literally sat everyone down at the computer and said, sign up for Facebook. Everybody sign up for Facebook. It's the thing you need. I can't imagine something like that happening now where they would force you into some sort of, well, I shouldn't say force. They didn't force. They said, we recommend it to interact with your peers. So like you said, it continues to evolve, and it means that your job is always a challenge to sort of follow that year over year, month over month, week over week. Yeah, very, very interesting insights there. So challenging to sort of, if you have an audience that spans generations too for a brand, I can't imagine how you handle that. But maybe shifting gear one more time here, back to the technical side of things. It doesn't have to be technical. You covered already a little bit about your AI stack, so to speak, of what tools you use. If you could rebuild your current stack of tools, no matter what, marketing, social, AI, what would you do differently? What tools would be your, this would, if I had unlimited budget, or if I really had everything, what would you put together as your major dashboard here?
I mean, Claude stays. I refer to him as my French assistant.
Or Swiss.
Yes, or Swiss. Claude absolutely stays. I feel like that's become very much a heartbeat for me and my business. ClickUp is my project management tool. I feel like they've become very heavily AI enabled. And I don't really use the AI tools there, but I feel like, if I was building from scratch, I'm like, okay, like what would a blank ClickUp look like? And like, maybe I would start to integrate more of those kind of like new product advancements they've made. I would, if I had all the budget in the world, I would absolutely, like this afternoon, onboard all of my clients to Plot, which is by and far the coolest community management tool for brands. I feel like algorithmically, brand content on LinkedIn is way down. Brand content anytime is just kind of a beast to get in front of people and make people care about it. And so I think the conversation in organic social right now is like, how do you increase your total surface area on the internet? And Plot would be the way to do that. I think Plot is how you get in front of people. It's amazing for measuring UGC. It's amazing for, just really every aspect of that like relationship building journey with a follower. So yeah, I would put everyone on Plot if I could. And then I think there's so many incredible content tools. I feel like I work primarily on Sprout, and all respect to them, but I feel like there's just like some pieces of it where I feel like I'm working with a dinosaur. I would probably migrate to a tool like Slate, someone who's doing more innovation. There's just basic stuff on Sprout that I'm like, how can I not filter for this? Which is why I've already kind of migrated some of my analytics to Minter. And, for new clients who are asking for a tool to work on, I would not put them on Sprout. I have a few favorites. I think Rilla Social is another great one. If you're like a team of one, you're a founder, you're trying to sell your own CPG product, and it's maybe like just you or you and a co-founder, you should be on Rilla. I think for something more high-powered, there's like much more high-powered tools, but I think Sprout is the worst of both worlds, where it's expensive and also kind of useless. Sorry, that turned into a hotter take than I was expecting.
We can cut that part out too if you want.
I'm so sorry to Sprout Social.
It's fine. Look, everybody's entitled to their opinion, right? And I'm sure that they have feedback, and like any company, they were like, "Oh, we need to evolve and add more features and this and this."
Yeah.
It's a lesson to any product out there too, that if you don't stay on top of your toes and put all the features that people want and continue to evolve to match the times, people will leave you. For more of a traditional, obviously, I'm sure at HubSpot, Marketo is something a lot of people used to use in the past, and the competitor, and you don't see it so much anymore. And there are probably reasons related to that. A lot of our clients will use that so much anymore.
Yeah, I just think like when I first started in social, it was like Sprout Social was like the thing you were like writing a letter to the CMO of like, can you please give me budget so that I can be on Sprout? And now it's like, I think $300 a seat a month. If you give me if you gave me that as just like a dollar value on a Post-it note and said, Claire, like you need to spend this much money per month, what would you want to spend it on? I could build out a stack that does better work than Sprout does for less money and buy myself a coffee on my way out with the change.
Well said. Well said. Well, I mean, the tools are in people's hands now too with a lot of these, the vibe coding and all these other things, right? I love it. Thank you for that. And thank you again for sharing some, again, these are tools I haven't heard too much about, and I don't think we've spoken to enough people in the social space specifically. So it's great to learn here a bit from you on this. Shifting one more time here to one of my favorite questions. We know that there are a lot of tried and true rules, so to speak, of the road for how people should do digital marketing. I know that's a big sentence that means a lot means nothing without saying a lot. But sometimes we need to buck the trend a little bit. I'm curious, what is your most unpopular marketing opinion or social opinion?
Okay, this might be too spicy. I'm like, I think demographics are dead a little bit.
Nothing's too spicy. These things evolve. Yeah. Oh, please elaborate if you may.
I mean, so obviously like demographics and like being like, okay, this is like our brand persona, like super important. Like I feel like that is always a conversation. But to me, and maybe it's because in social, the feedback loop is so fast. Like you are seeing analytics like daily on, okay, I posted this and it works. It's like really kind of about like what the audience is responding to. And I feel like there is a little bit of like, we talk about, like if you want to reach a millennial man, you should be on Reddit. Guess what? All of my Gen Z female friends are on Reddit. And so it's like you start to create these stories in your head that the data then doesn't back up. And I think actually where I'm coming to this unpopular opinion from is the existence of lurkers. I think social media usage has changed when we're talking about demographics. Gen Z lurks. People, like your name might not be on the profile. You might have posted 0 times, but like you're there and you're looking. And so if you have these lurkers, right, like I, to the Reddit example, there's a lot of Gen Z women on Reddit, but if they're not setting up profiles and they're just searching, best skincare hacks Reddit, you might not know that there's any Gen Z women looking at that thread, but it's like a huge driver for you. I'm planning a wedding right now. I found my wedding planner off of one Reddit thread where someone said, hey, who are the best wedding planners in the Twin Cities? And one person mentioned a glowing review of her name. And so I Googled her. And so I'm sure in her small business marketing, that's attributed to Google because I searched her name and clicked on it. But it's because I was deep lurking on Reddit. And there's like no way you would have known I was using Reddit to plan my wedding because I wasn't on there from an account. Right. And so I think when I say demographics are dead, it's like it's working or it's not. On organic social media. But like if you get too bogged down in trying to figure out exactly who is looking at your content, like I think there's just better ways to test it. I think there's better ways to understand what's clicking with people than being like, men like this content. Okay.
No, I think I agree with you on this because there's been a sort of democratization of all content. I feel like everybody's, eternally online. And so we're all seeing similar things. Yes, we have our algorithms, but, and people are, much more open to pulling in things that might not be traditionally this or, a man's thing or a woman's thing or this or that thing. People are not as black and white, so to speak, or as people thought they thought in the past or as advertisers thought in the past. I love that. And I'm the same way as a lurker on Reddit. I don't have an account. I can't tell you how much time I spend on Reddit. It's probably not healthy. So I think that's a very interesting point and something that's worth considering for folks. Maybe it's not the old school. Oh, we're looking for 18 to 25 and, New York City area that have this degree. Everybody's sort of in the same area. It's very democratized now. I love that opinion.
And I think the other thing you said it, there's entire behaviors of like people talk about if you're living with a partner, sending TikToks to each other to watch together before bed. And so on TikTok, you'll see comments that say, his FYP, not mine, right? You see something and you're like, no, I want my boyfriend to hear about it, not me, right? If it's like a cute date idea or something. But there's an entire like part of the algorithm that is surfacing content that person might think someone else wants to see, right? And so if you're like, oh my gosh, 25-year-old women are massively interacting with this content, it's like, well, you need to know why. Is it because they're all commenting and saying, show this to my boyfriend? Is it because they're all sending it to their boyfriend? Like you don't actually know. And so, like I have a fiance. I love looking at his TikTok feed. It's so much more fun than mine. Mine is trying to sell me Ozempic and Botox. And his is like, look at this hilarious duck walking through the street. And so I'm like, women want the duck content, but it's not showing up in our algorithm because something somewhere says, oh, this is a woman. We should be selling beauty treatments to her. And I'm like, no, like give me the funny animals. And so I think in the attention economy, it is a very big assumption to assume that someone is logging in to their screen and then only consuming content on that one screen that they logged into.
Oh, very interesting perspective. Something I haven't even thought about before either. So thank you for because I'm the same way with my wife. I will send her things or vice versa that would never show up on either of our timelines, right? Yeah. But we're both interested, and we're like, oh, that's cool. Very, very interesting perspective there to think about, and probably something people should take away and take a look at their strategy, maybe to analyze it through that lens. Any parting thoughts or words of wisdom you have before we sign off here, Claire?
Man, okay. My parting wisdom is actually probably, as I've been sharing some of my spicier organic social takes, I would give everyone the same advice that I gave myself after that big moment with the AI comment, which is the best thing you can do in the AI age is protect your discernment and your taste and your editorial eye. And so yes, use AI. Yes, use it to scale. Yes, use it to make you more effective. But you absolutely need to be protecting your ability to think in the age of AI because that will be the moneymaker. And so if you don't have a hobby that doesn't involve a screen, get a hobby that doesn't involve a screen. If you haven't read a book that's infuriatingly slow paced and makes you feel kind of dumb, read a book that's infuriatingly slow paced and makes you feel kind of dumb. Right? We have to be working our brains like it's a muscle, like we're a manosphere gym bro who's gotta get those gains, but get the brain gains.
Amazing. Love that metaphor there. Rings true to this former gym bro right here.
Yeah.
Claire, Hueg, thank you so much. PersephonePlanet.co. Really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us here today.
Thanks for having me, Jeff. This was fun.
It was a blast. And you've been listening to What Keeps Marketers Up at Night, brought to you by Darwin, the team that helps CMOs finally trust our data and sleep a little better. Subscribe, share, and get some rest. You've earned it.